Take hang. Rendering 1000111001001. That means well, hello. And welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, not pencil I pencil, pencil to pencil.
Pencil I.
We're gonna make it. We're gonna get through this, you guys. Welcome back to the live cast, live stream, Pencil to Pencil. We had a really strong month and change, you guys. We had like a murderer's row of comic book guests
Who left and then murdered people.
I guess I have to watch how I say that, right? The last couple of weeks, and guys, we kind of took a little break last week. We just kind of had to recalibrate a little bit, but now we're back. Welcome everybody to the live stream. If this is your first time here, well, hello, and welcome to the live cast where you, dear live viewer, get to interact with expert cartoonists like myself and these other fine feathered
These other
people.
bums.
And these jamokes. It's funny. I was watching something, and there's a couple of reels that they use kind of like different generations of slang with the same two people. Like there was like the Generation Z couple breaking up, and it was funny. And then they went back in the 30s and like, listen, doll, what's the big deal? But anyway, let me do the introductions. We have a lot to talk about. I was about to go on a rail and I stopped myself. My name is JAMAR NICHOLAS. In this new book publishing space I'm in, they call me an author illustrator, but I'm still just your friendly neighborhood poobah and cartoonist. I do Leon the Extraordinary, which is the beginning of a fine series at Scholastic under the graphics imprint. I'll look for the next book this time next year. And I would be remiss, everybody missed that. I would be remiss if I did not introduce my other co-host. He is known as the world heavyweight champion of webcomics. Do you do the belt motion? Right here, there you go. Stone Cold Steve Conley. Watch, you got an old back injury. What's up, Steve Conley? What do you
Hello, everybody. I missed you. I missed you all so much.
Oh, I missed you too.
My name is Steve Conley. I am the writer and artist. I am the author, illustrator of the webcomic The Middle Age, which you can read at middleagecomic.com. It's on WebTunes and Tapas and Go Comics and all those other wonderful things.
Wow.
I might be remiss. Is that a word? Remiss.
That is a word.
I would might introduce the Tower of Power, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, the masked maestro of mark making, Mr. Mike Manley.
Oh, where's my mask? Oh no, they've seen me. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Mike. Mike, what do you do, pray tell?
I do the Phantom and Judge Parker. And many other things.
Many other things. I was just thinking when Steve does his Mike intro and you do the Too Sweet to Be Sour, Tower of Power, Funky Like a Monkey, all that kind of stuff. It was, I'm a big pro wrestling guy, and some of the etymology of that kind of like jive rhythmy talk goes back a long way. But superstar Billy Graham was one of the progenitors of that. He passed a little while ago, and he begat so many other guys. Like Hulk Hogan's whole look is from Superstar Graham, even just being a really big dude that talks real slick. There you go. But we could talk all about that another time.
I think mine is a complete riff from Dusty Rhodes, which you were wearing the attire the other day.
Oh yeah, I have my big Dust shirt on. That's great. But guys, there's a lot going on, and we're taking a break from guests for a week, maybe a couple weeks. I'm not sure how that's going to go. But I think it's good that sometimes we don't have a guest because you may forget that us three are a show all in itself. Right.
The three-ring circus.
And hello to everybody in the chat. They're trying to distract me. JRD's asking me questions. But we have a really interesting topic today, and we're just going to kick the ball around. We're going to go for an hour and a half, and if you're watching this live, please feel free to add to it. This is not the scuttlebutt hour. We're not here to throw mud or fan flames, but we're going to talk about the real Jake of what it takes to make it in comic books. And I have this really cool. Where's the thing that Steve made today? Bam! Oh, hold on a second. Let me clear. Bam! This week we're talking about the cost of doing business. Steve, I thought you were going to put dollar signs in the S's.
No, we're international. I couldn't do that. Yeah.
The lira and all that in there. All right, so I guess we'll just get started. So,
before we get started, I did want to talk about my what I.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to do that first?
And,
Okay.
I have a field report.
Oh, I guess I have a field report too. So, all right, cool.
There we go.
All right, so, all right, hold on. Let me move this around. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so
I'm rusty. All right, I'm working on it. There's too many things. All right, I'm sorry. Someone's gonna get seasick. All right,
okay.
Continue. Sorry.
Perfect.
All right, go ahead, Mike.
So I've been thinking about this for a while, especially since COVID. I haven't been teaching a class, and then they restructured the class that I was teaching, so it's not really convenient for me to teach. But I do enjoy teaching, and
I'm sorry, Mike.
And I do.
This is horrible.
There you go. That's the best.
Sorry,
That's
Steve. Go ahead, Mike.
So I decided, I thought for a while that I would try to offer a mentorship, and I especially started thinking about it really. Well, I started thinking about it a little while ago, but then when John Romita passed, and it reminded me of when I worked with Al Williamson and his mentorship towards me, and how Romita, I mean, that's one thing you kept seeing over and over again, how he mentored so many young cartoonists. And I thought about the mentors that I had, like Al and then my friend Ricardo Villagran. And so I thought, well, maybe what I could do is it's too much to try to figure out right now, like trying to teach online classes and all that other stuff. I don't really want to grade people and all that other stuff. That's one of the things I sort of didn't like about teaching was the grading thing. And so I thought, well, what I could do is maybe offer 2 mentorships. Now, if you go to my Facebook page, you will see the breakdown of what I'm offering and how to apply. But basically, it's sort of like being able to take a class with me. I can only offer to 2 students, or I guess young professionals at this point, just because of my schedule. And so I would have people send me their work. I would critique their work. We would do this over Zoom. I'd be able to do live drawovers. I have all the requirements and the criteria to apply, again, on my Facebook page. This is not a beginning cartooning class.
No.
So this is not like, oh, my little 9-year-old wants to draw Spider-Man. It's not about that. It's about mentoring people that are already on the path and trying to develop better habits, improve your work. Because one of the things about this business is that you have to try to figure out what your trajectory is, because each goal has a path. And being a person who's self-taught for cartooning, I realize how important those formative years are to charting your path to get to where you want. And a lot of times when you're younger, you don't necessarily know what the steps are, or you might be confused about the steps, even though one of the things about the business is that the environment is always changing. is constantly changing. I've been talking about that a lot actually lately. We sort of think of everything as being fixed, like, oh, I'm just going to work for Marvel, or I'm going to work for, I'm going to do a web comic, or I'm going to do this. But the landscape is constantly evolving, and as it does, you sort of have to be able to evolve with it. So I think those formative years where you build your solid core skills are so vital, because they allow you to have the most ability to shift, right? So I decided to offer, and it's open to anybody in the world, anyone who can speak English and anyone who can Zoom. And like I said, the how you apply is all on my Facebook page. It's pretty simple. I just want to see samples of your drawing and have you email them to me. So if you can Zoom, you can be in Europe, you can be in Asia. We'd have to figure out timelines and things like that. But I think it's really important for artists to share the information, because actually that's how it really was for most of comics. Most of the history of the industry was someone working as an assistant, as an apprentice. Joe Kubert worked for Will Eisner, right? So many of the great comic book artists of the past started as someone's assistant, and that's how the information was transferred. Now, of course, there's a lot of stuff on the internet, but one of the things about the internet is that you don't know if it's good or not. It's not vetted, and that's, I think, the benefit of having a mentor who can say, this is good, this not so much.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Mike, there's a question here, and I'm glad we're having this discourse. Our best bud, Notorious JRD, asked, so this is less an art skills mentorship than an art career business mentorship?
No, it's both. I mean, you get the benefit of my 40 years of working in comics, my knowledge of the business, as well as the skills that you will need, I believe are really important and have allowed me to have the career that I've wanted. But one of the things that sometimes is a shock for students, especially in the animation classes, would be when I would tell them that the cartoons are on the air so you see the commercials, right? And that you have to think of the fact that even if you're working for whoever, Walt Disney or Marvel or DC, they're a business and you're a business working for their business, right? And so it's great to draw these characters that we all love, but you have to be business minded. And one of the ways people get taken advantage of is if they don't think about that, because it's always sort of the stereotype, but it is often true that artists don't like business, right? We don't like math. I don't like math, right? But I like math when it comes to getting paid, right? I like math when it comes to my slice of the pie. And it's very important to have both of those things working. Some people are naturally good at it. Some people have to work at it. I mean, we were just talking about this before we went on. I mean, every day, every week, all three of us do business things that are vital to our career that have nothing to do with drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So, all right, thanks, JRD. So I hope that cleared a little bit up. So, Mike, also just some kind of granular questions. Is there? I asked you this. I don't want to put you on the spot. Is there a deadline for this? Like, is there like a window when people can't apply anymore?
I did not put that on the
Mhm.
the post, but I figure within 2 weeks, if you haven't applied,
Right.
You don't really want it.
yeah,
Right.
I mean, right. And I put down very explicit, I
Mhm.
think fairly simple
Yeah.
ways to apply.
Mhm.
And if you can't follow the rules, well, then I'm sorry, I can't help you. You know, it's like make it easy for me to help you.
Right. Help me help you. And you know what, Mike? Thinking about that, that makes a lot of sense. And also, just to kind of put my thumb in the soup here. If you go, oh wow, Mike Manley's offering a mentorship. Let me get my stuff together, but you don't have the stuff together already. Maybe this isn't for you. You know what I'm saying? So,
I
like, I
had
think that.
several people today already write me,
Mhm.
and that was one of the things because basically I want to see 6 pages of penciled continuity. Doesn't
Right.
matter the style, you know, it could be Batman or it could be Adventure Time. I don't care. I want to see your drawing and how you think
Yeah.
as you draw, right? And a lot of people like, well, I don't have pencils. I don't have any pencil samples. I'm like, you want to do comics and you don't have any copies of like pages that you've drawn in pencil seems a little odd. So that's true. One of the things I always tell students is you must always have your portfolio ready to rock. When that opportunity comes, you got your, oh, by the way, here's
Mhm.
my card, right? Because
Mhm.
I don't believe in luck. What I believe in is preparation meeting opportunity,
Mhm.
right? If you're
Mhm.
not prepared when the opportunity comes, miss the bus, man.
That's so true.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a lot of this, and I'm excited to talk about the convention part because the chat's talking about that. I can't tell you how many times somebody's come to my table and they're very excited to show me whatever that they have. No, I usually ask them, "Do you have anything to show?"
Mhm.
And they're like, see what had happened was, and I'm like, well, do you have a card? Oh man, he like turns to his girl. I told you I should have got caught. You're not ready,
Right.
and that's okay. That's okay. But anyway, we'll talk about that. So Mike, was there anything else about the mentorship?
No, I mean, basically, I figured it's like taking a class, so roughly a semester. I'll see how it goes. You know what I mean? I've mentored people before. I mentored my buddy Scott Cohn. I mentored Mimi. I mentored Liang. Liang's now my assistant, and Mimi was my assistant for a while. And so I have met students in the past who, a few of them, like Benaya, who colored your Leon book, was a
Mhm.
former student and a former assistant of mine. So
Mhm.
um, I just feel it's important to share the information to the
Yeah.
next generation, right? I mean, Al shared a lot of stuff with me. Uh, he didn't charge me anything, you know. He didn't say, "Well, you need to pay me."
Right.
You know, it was his friendship and that opportunity to learn from him was priceless. I mean, it changed my career, right? And then the same thing with being friends with Ricardo since the 80s and
Mm.
sitting next to him. He stayed with me very often when he was in the States. Sitting next to him and having him ink my work or watching me ink other work or watching him paint. I mean, I just learned by watching someone else work. That is the great thing if you have that opportunity. And then what I try to do when I would teach is not just say, well, you know, that needs to be more square or that needs to be this or that. I would actually draw over the person's stuff, their work, show them how this can be fixed, show them this is a way to do it, right? You may end up coming up with another way.
Mhm.
But, you know, that is what I wanted when I was younger. So I was very fortunate enough in my 20s to have those opportunities that kind of kickstarted me or I should sort of say not Kickstarter, but sort of like afterburners, because I was already very studious and very hungry and very much wanted to do this. So I just think, I wish I could do it with more people, but I think really, to be honest, only 2 people would allow me to, with my schedule, have the time to spend the quality time with the person. Because that's one of the things that would happen with a class, is that if you had one semester, I had like 30 students. That's a lot of students. That's a lot of looking at people's work.
It's almost too many. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And the other thing, is like, if we schedule the time, you're supposed to show up, you're supposed to mail the stuff. You don't, we move on.
Yeah. I'm getting more excited as you talk about this. Like I just want to be in the corner, like, that's what happened to you.
So have either one of you done that? I mean, I know you've done a little bit of it, right, Jamar?
I mean, I've not necessarily, I think I got a lot by osmosis, but I also got a lot just, like being our friendship has been like really beneficial in a lot of ways for me. And even just kind of having, I could kind of look at this from a networking perspective. You know what I mean? Just kind of being around kindred spirits and cartoonists. And as I think when we first met, like I was connected to a couple of different societies of cartoonists in the city.
Right.
You know what I mean? And just kind of being in spaces with other people trying to figure out the puzzle, or me even, co-creating that cartoonist clutch back in the late 90s. So, it's mentorship and by committee. You know what I mean?
It's like camaraderie. You're like a whole bunch of folks who have a similar passion for this, and you share that passion, and you, I mean, I sat in on some of those where you get together and you sketch, or you have something to eat, sort of like a precursor to the drink and draws.
Yeah, it was like pre-drink and draws, right? Just being in a space, and there's a lot of people that do that inside their own little groups. It doesn't have to have like a logo or a T-shirt involved. It's just like, we're going to the Perkins, and we're just going to sit around and draw in this booth for a couple of hours. It doesn't have to be a giant, parade of things, but just kind of connecting with other people and making the commitment to show up and then contribute, and then
I guess people do that on Twitch now, right, Steve? Like, you do a Twitch thing, right? Isn't there like a community of people that they kind of get together and share their
and then post artwork on Discord or some such. I also, from one semester, I mentored for Center for Cartoon Studies. A student there inexplicably wanted me to be their mentor, and so they reached out, and for a semester, gave feedback, encouragement. It was really rewarding. It was
at the CCCS, right?
Yeah.
You went up to Vermont for that?
No, it was all done remote. It was all done.
Wow.
But it was really excellent. It was, and they've got good students, and it was a good experience, and they speak the language. I mean, they're getting the foundational training to begin with, so they're already, halfway there.
I imagine you getting off a helicopter, running over. Okay, show me your samples. Like above your head.
The intro to MASH. See running across the field, holding his hat. But just to that. I started teaching a long time ago because I had wished that I had grown up having like a cartoonist person that I could go and sweep the hair off the floor and kind of learn. Yeah, I mean that sounded so amazing, and we kind of come from the place where there wasn't a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you knew somebody but they didn't really exist. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, they live in this place called Kalamazoo. Like, I'm never going to Kalamazoo.
Well, I mean, I think also too, if you lived in New York,
maybe
if you lived in LA, but in Philly, there was no, and like when I lived in Michigan as a teenager, there were no, I mean, supposedly Keith Pollard lived in Detroit, but I saw him once at a convention, right? I think I was like 13 or 14, I think, at a convention. But it just was not like it is now, where if you want to do character design, there's a whole, Instagram is full. It's just, so it was not easy to even find. You might find a person, but that doesn't mean that they want to be a mentor or they want to have anything to do with you.
Right.
No?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Even talking about like having help or assistance, a lot of people aren't natural teachers or don't want people in their space or are very guarded or like, by the time I teach this kid how to do it, I could have done it twice. So
Right.
there's also
there is that. I mean, there is that with an assistant. So, when you have a pool of students over the course of teaching, you get to see which ones have the attitude, because the most important thing is having the right attitude, the right personality to be a successful cartoonist. I used to always, when you're younger, you think, no, it's talent. Talent is like third or fourth down. The most important thing is to have the right attitude, because there's a lot of really talented people, but they're kind of fucked up. Yeah. They're not easy to get along with. Yeah. They have a sort of they don't have an easy to get along with personality. They don't take instructions. They don't take feedback. They're like into their thing, and like if they can do their thing with your thing, great, but they can't really do your thing, right? And
pause,
which is fine if you're a fine artist, because if you're a fine artist, you're purely serving yourself, right? But if you're a commercial artist, you're serving the client. You may be serving yourself and enjoying drawing Spider-Man or Batman or whatever character you want to draw, but you're also serving the publisher, right? You're serving Disney or Warner Brothers or whoever. So there's that balancing that you have to have, right?
So let's start at the beginning here, because there's a million different ways we can kind of load these cannons, right? So I was thinking of one. Maybe we'll make them case studies. All right. So I just came up with this, guys. Bear with me. So case study A is Charlotte. And Charlotte just graduated from art school. Charlotte was pretty good and turned in all her stuff on time and was considered a really good student because she didn't give anybody problems. But now, ink's dried, diploma, yay, cap up in the air, and now her Adobe account is shut off. She doesn't have the computer lab anymore. She can't go to the paper guy behind that little half door in the dungeon of the basement where you can just get stuff printed. But she now this piece of paper says she's a professional cartoonist. So where does she start?
And she doesn't have any assignments with teachers saying you must now by Friday make this, right?
So
I need to see roughs by Friday, right?
Yeah, right. So what do we do for Charlotte? Is she a professional?
Well,
what'll get her there?
Well, I always thought my definition, and the definition as I understood it of a professional, was someone who was paid for doing a job, right? Not an intern. Interns are not paid usually, right? You get paid by experience and whatever. But if you say, hey, I drew a business card for this person, I did. If you get paid for it, you're a professional. That means that you had to meet all the criteria of the customer or of the client, and they were satisfied,
Mm-hmm.
and then they pay you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a whole lot hanging over the question because it's so much has to do with the situation that the person's in. Are they still living at home? They still have insurance from their family?
Right.
Do they have a partner who can support them in some fashion? One of the things that gets glossed over with a lot of cartoonists is that, oh yeah, I've been self-publishing, and it's like, oh yeah, and by the way, this is my spouse who provides me with health insurance, and
Yes.
it's a steady paycheck that keeps the lights on, and in those lean months, those lean seasons,
lean years.
You know?
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes on, and then it comes down to aspirations, because there is kind of a idea that I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I kind of didn't care how, like whether it was going to be newspapers or comic books or internet or whatever. I wanted my solution to paying the rent to be drawing a picture. Like I'm like, oh man, things are tight. I better start drawing. I wanted that to be my solution and not, some other means. So it really kind of depends on how you filter that through the lens of however she wants to live.
I'm making a banner for this. I think this is cool.
And what were her goals and her focus and her function in school?
Yeah,
because that's another really big question I always have for students, because they think like somehow you go to school and you study and you pay all this money and then you graduate and then somehow the job flies out of the ether, and you get the job. And a lot of people struggle very heavily the first 2, 3, 4 years out of school, because building a career is building a career. And right now, I have some very good friends, young friends, who are going through building a career at the worst time to build a career in at least 20 years, if not longer, right? If you're trying to get into comics, you're trying to get into animation, there's more asses than seats. And the landscape, as I was saying in the beginning of the podcast, is constantly changing, And a lot of those things have nothing to do with you, right? Some board of directors side somewhere, we're getting rid of all these cartoons. Oh, we're getting rid of all this, right? It has nothing to do with you, but it does affect you, and it affects the opportunities that might be opening to you. So that's another aspect of tying into being business minded, because you could say, Steve, well, I just want to be a cartoonist. I don't care what it is, but you were also aware of the different aspects of the business, right? Are you going to be a gag cartoonist? Are you going to be a newspaper cartoonist? Are you going to be a comic book artist, for Marvel or DC? Are you going to work doing greeting cards? I mean, each one of those goals is a different trajectory, which has different requirements, different steps to get to that path, right? And that you concretely have to figure out and take to achieve that.
Yeah, a little bit. This feels like, okay, we've got art career, the role-playing game. We were building our character right now. I would hope that up until before you got to the part of graduating, that you would have put some points into building your portfolio with maybe professional work. So if you are getting a degree, if you can do something that is practical, that is a piece of something, here's a pinup I did for somebody, here's an inking assignment I did for somebody, some published work, to prove that you can meet a deadline and you can produce work in a professional capacity. Often pinup work isn't super helpful, because like Mike's saying, depending on the kind of work you want, if it's supposed to be continuity, if you're trying to build your own brand. I just got back from Heroes Con, and there was an artist right next to me. This was the first large convention they'd ever set up at. Artist, her name's Tiffany Pettit, and she's produced 2 graphic novels. And she recently graduated from SCAD, and there she was with her table full of freelance artwork, pinups, prints, sketches that she was doing, and she was hustling all weekend. It was inspiring. And has 2 graphic novels, fat graphic novels of a continuing story. I'm like, that is someone who loves this stuff and
Right. Yeah.
unstoppable. The things can get in her way, but and presuming if things, if the obstacles don't become too large, this person will succeed.
Well, the thing is that obstacles always get in your way.
Yeah, but if some are insurmountable. I don't want to pretend that some aren't, like,
well, that's true.
Right. But if she is amazing, inspiring, and worked her table and gave people who came to the table a lot of attention. It feels like a bit of that kind of person you've described, Jamar, as
right.
I got to see that over the weekend.
And you know what, I've run into a couple of students like that over the years. There's very few and far between, but I think they've already had to have gone into this thinking in a business manner before they were finished with school, right? They may have been going to conventions with their friends, or they might have been making mini comics and kind of, doing that whole system beforehand. There's a lot of people, and you see this all the time, who kind of finish school and then now they're waiting to press this button, and now they're supposed to be a pro. And
who are your role models, right? Because some people, role models are people that are very entrepreneurial. That's part of their whole thing, right? So I very specifically remember as a teenager being not only impressed by Neil Adams because of his art, but being impressed because of his business acumen. Even though I didn't know that word probably then, I was very impressed with the fact that he was a businessman. He had his own studio that other people worked at, right? So he was definitely a major role model for me in the fact that I want to be a guy like that, right? Who can call his shots,
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So JRD is asking a lot of questions, and what's really interesting about these kind of live round conversations is that the chat is asking questions, and we're trying to kind of say what we're saying off the top of our heads. And I don't want anybody to feel like we're stepping on them, because it's just not everybody's going to be happy through these kind of conversations, which is really interesting about your mentorship. But JRD has a couple of really interesting questions, like, does it have to be published, or would graphic design work, logos, etc., that aren't necessarily published count? And let me answer that.
For what?
I guess just if you
for portfolio.
For portfolio. I think it's fine. I mean, I think anything that's of really great quality, that looks like you have a proficiency in what you're doing, or you're using the tools in a good manner, should count. Not necessarily has to be tear sheets from a newspaper or something like that. But
I'm gonna disagree.
You're gonna disagree with that?
I'm gonna disagree with that.
Okay.
If you're applying for a design job, they're definitely applicable. But if you're applying for a job drawing, don't show me a logo. Show me a drawing.
Oh, yeah,
I can look at a logo,
columns,
right? I can look at a logo and go, oh, okay, yeah, okay. I need a logo. This guy does great logos. This guy does great logos. If I need someone to tell a story, I need to see how well you tell a story. I need to see how well you draw, how you can move the camera, right? So that's a big issue with art colleges, because one of the things they do is they push everybody to get your portfolio, right? Go out and buy a really nice, expensive Toya portfolio with the plastic sleeve and all that stuff, right? All right. And then the stuff they put in often, frankly, is garbage, and it will not get anyone a job. And it's really sad to see that, because they're making this generic portfolio full of generic stuff, but every job you're going to apply for is basically a specialty.
Yeah, it's all different. Yeah.
Right? If you're going to apply to draw Spider-Man, it's different than if you're going to draw Mickey Mouse. If you're drawing backgrounds for Mickey Mouse, it's different if you're drawing backgrounds for Batman.
Yeah.
Right? And your portfolio must be tailored to show to each person who will accept the portfolio and then take that portfolio and go show it to the people that actually make the decision, right? So if you're at a Lightbox, you're at any of these places, right? Very often the first round of people who are sent to that, they collect the portfolios, or the person at the studio collects the samples, right? And then they go and they show it to the person who hires backgrounds, or the producer of that particular show. So if you're showing the wrong portfolio, the wrong piece of art to a good person, but that's not what they want, that does not help you in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So your portfolio is never fixed. Your portfolio is always being worked on. There's always new work being put into it. Your portfolio should be arranged so that if somebody goes, let's say you want to, our character wants to work in animation, which is a broad field, actually much broader than comics, because you have people that do all these different specialties. All right. So if you want to draw backgrounds, or you want to be a character designer, or you want to be a storyboard artist, or you want to be a background painter, well, I need to see painting samples if you're going to be a background painter. I need to see line drawings if you're going to be a background designer, because very often the person who designs the backgrounds doesn't paint the backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the things you have to do is decide, at least this is my target, right? I want to be a background painter, or I want to be a storyboard artist, and so you target a portfolio for that. If you want to do something else, you target a portfolio for that. You have these sort of generic portfolios that, like, oh, I got a pin up, and here's a landscape, and here's another thing, and then here's something from another class that I did. Class assignments, unless they are really fantastic, should not be going in your portfolio. The class assignment is like going to the gym to get the skill. And then you need to make all new stuff to put in your professional portfolio. And if people go like, well, I just did 7 pieces. Do 7 more.
Right.
Do 7. I just said this to a guy today who's trying to apply for the mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see pencils. That's all I want to see. Right. And you can send me 6 pieces of something else, but I want to see pencils because I want to see how you think. Right. That tells me everything I need. I don't have any pencils. Go draw 6 pages.
Yeah.
That doesn't guarantee that you will be placed, but you'll still be better off from having drawn those 6 pages, because now you have 6 pages and you've gotten a little bit better over the course of doing those 6 pages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to finish out our case study here, because I want to do some more case studies before we're done.
Okay.
So some things that I wanted to touch on with this, because I think they're interesting, is square one. Once you're out and you're like back at home in the basement or whatever, I'm just kind of making this up, is what exactly are you going to do now? Right. And I know there's a million ways that you can panic and not move forward. I've had a million students over my time working at universities that I would check on, hey, how's it going? They would avoid me because they didn't want to talk to me, because they knew that not that I'd be disappointed, but they weren't doing what they should be doing. And I'm not their dad. You can do whatever you need to do, but you know what I mean? But it's kind of like, I would see a guy, hey, Keith, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a year. What's going on? Oh man, I was and then my girl, and you know what I mean, like all of that stuff, all that resistance is real, but you have to figure out some way to carve out a way to keep motivating yourself to move forward. But what you're moving forward to is a really big part of this conversation. Like, what are you going to do? Do you want to go into comics? Everything Mike is talking about makes perfect sense. Building a portfolio because you want to work at DC, you're going to fill this thing with pencils, if that's what you want to be, a penciler of DC characters, You know what I mean?
But even today, if you, the way I got in, I'm always saying that Pangea doesn't exist. So you're not going to get in at DC. What you're going to do is you're going to get in somewhere else, and you're going to get practice. Our buddy Mike Hawthorne is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Mike, like you, started self-publishing, started doing his own stuff.
Yep.
Step by step, you can go back and you can see Mike's career as he built. Now he's drawing Batman.
Yep.
You don't start out drawing Batman, right? And it's even harder right now than it was 2 years ago to just start drawing Batman because of the nature of the business. So what they want is they're not going to give their star book to somebody they don't know, right? That's why back when I got in, what they would do is they would give you a backup story. Take these 8 pages, kid, go home, draw it, bring it in. Oh, okay, all right, here's another story, right? And you go home, and then eventually somebody screwed the pooch. You need to fill an issue. Go, right? That's how it used to be, but it's not that way anymore. Now you start out in the smaller publishers, do your work, people get to know you, you get to network, you get to give somebody a comic book. Here's my stuff. Oh, okay, yeah, I saw that, right? Then you get to the majors, right? That's how it's done now. So it's like not how I did it. And who knows, in 5 years, that may not be how you do it then. It may be a whole other, right? There's people who are doing web comics who are now drawing stuff for Marvel and DC.
There was something that's been true for a long time is, boy, if people, you should have started 5 years ago. That's always been the case, which means 5 years from now, people are going to be saying you should have started right now. So that's kind of inspiring, right? So get started now, because if you wait, you're going to wish you would have. You should start. Oh man, Twitter used to be great. Oh, the message board used to be awesome. So great.
Right.
But you know, it seems to be always that's always the case.
Well, you know, it's something that it's funny. You know, when I started teaching, I was excited to teach because I wanted to share what I knew, but I learned about how to teach. And then I learned what teaching does. It sort of crystallizes your approach, because there's many things that I did that I didn't sit down and analyze necessarily in a very academic way of how, you do things. And when you help a bunch of different people from a lot of different levels and a lot of different perspectives, all sort of try to solve the same problem, which is what homework is, it sort of crystallizes your philosophy and your approach. But one of the things I did observe was that about 95% of the students were motivated by the deadline and the momentum of being in school with their fellow students. And then when you leave, you have to have the oar in the water, and you have to paddle, and you have to decide, I'm going to go upstream this way, or I'm going to go upstream that way. And that really eliminates almost everyone who graduates from art school, right? Especially within about 5 years, because within about 5 years, your life starts to change. Maybe you get married, maybe you have kids, cost of living.
But thinking about the hypothetical where Jamar was, this person's back at home and they want to get, what's the next step? That is it, if it's wanting to do comic books, that seems like a very legitimate course of action. But what other options are there that were web comics, or getting another gig and doing your own stuff on the side?
Whatever you have to, if you want to draw comics, the only way you're going to get to draw comics is to get better at drawing comics and to actually produce a lot of comics. So it's like that firing 1,000 arrows, right? And you only need one to hit, because what you need is somebody to see some comics that you are drawing that represent where you are currently, not something you did 6 months ago or 3 years ago in a first year class, right? They need to see where you are now, what you're doing now, and that you're, and if you are not drawing that stuff all the time, that opportunity, I say preparation meets opportunity. When that opportunity comes, do you have something? Are you going to be able to intersect? Are you going to be able to nail that opportunity? Right? If somebody comes up and they have an opportunity like, oh, yeah, you know, I've got these old samples I did first year, 4 years ago. Nobody wants to look at that. Nobody wants to see that, right? They're going to find somebody else who currently has, oh yeah, boom, pulls it out, right? So again, I feel it's based upon your personality. If our case study is hungry, she's always making comics because she loves to make comics, and she would make comics even if her day job was working at a bank, right? If that's what her job ended up being, because she loves making comics. But if you want to make comics for a living, you also have to look at, well, who are the publishers right now? How many publishers are there? Right? We all know Marvel and DC and Image and Dark, but who are, the Moonstones, who are all the other independent small publishers that might be looking? And if that is not something, or the people that are doing anthologies. So you need to be networking online. You need to be finding out, do a little detective work on your own. Where are the opportunities? Who are the people that are hiring? Right? That would be the first step.
Mm-hmm. I'm afraid we're going to run out of time. We just got the case study A. And before we go into, I have like B and C, and it's really interesting. I want to make sure we don't lose sight of kind of what we talked about before when we were cooking up this episode. Kind of like the kernel of this whole episode came out of us talking about just how much stuff costs to run a studio. And when you think about studio, I don't mean like Pixar. I mean like me in this room. and I have to have, subscriptions to things to do my job.
Right.
So let me take this off the screen and let's just kind of talk about that right now. So the modern 2023 cartoonist is probably working digitally. And even if they're not and they're working traditionally with pen and paper, they probably need a really good scanner. Or they're doing some sort of kind of like Frankenstein mashup on their little bitty scanner to make things work. Mike and Steve, what are some go-to things that you need to have to get your jobs done in 2023 as a pro cartoonist?
Well, we were talking about that, and I was thinking, like, when I started, I just needed paper and a pencil and access to a Xerox machine. Whether it was, go down the street, as I talked to the guy that did the Xeroxing and a bad job, or, having, because you needed to have copies of the pencils. So when you sent the stuff off, you'd have reference for the next pages you're working on. And that was basically just like what people used in the 1960s, right? They would get stats shot or whatever. But now for me to do my job, I have to have high-speed internet, computer, monitor, scanner, Photoshop, Clip Studio. That's just the basics, right? Just the basics that I need. So, when I started out, I didn't have to go buy a computer. I didn't have to have a scanner. I didn't have to have any of that stuff. All that stuff was done. All production was done in-house at the publishers. Now all production is pretty much done by me. Like even the last Marvel job, I drew it, inked it, put it in the template, put the template up on their server, right? So in order for me to do that, I gotta have my laptop, or I've got to have my laptop and my monitor, or I have an iMac, right? I have an iMac, a laptop, and the iPad, which I'm on now. So, Photoshop is what, $240 a year, somewhere around that.
For the Adobe subscription, yeah.
Right. And I also have Word, and I have Acrobat, because Francesco sends me scripts and I open them in Word. But the ones that Tony sends me, Tony uses some kind of screenwriting program, and that opens in Acrobat. Right. So I have to have anything I need that allows me to do my job in a timely fashion. And I must also always have backup. So if my one computer blows, I got to have another computer. I got to have a second computer, because when I was just on paper, I didn't worry about anything blowing. You know what I mean? I just drawn on paper.
Right.
But, and then I got to have backup.
Yeah.
Got to have a backup of my files. Right. So I've got all that. So, when you go to college now, part of the price of the college, like when I was teaching at UArts, everybody got a Mac, everybody got the Adobe Suite, everybody had all the same tools that the professional people used. So you're being trained in college on the same tools that you will work when you leave and you go and work at Pixar or Disney or wherever. You're going to use it. You're going to use Photoshop. You're going to use Illustrator. Of course, now everybody uses Clip Studio, or if you're doing storyboards, you're going to use Storyboard Pro, right? And these programs, 10 years ago, people weren't using it. Now they're using it. 5 years from now, they'll use something else. So that's just.
Don't forget your light bill, because you gotta pay that.
Right. So I mean, it's just it's part of the landscape now. As a young artist, you have to be technically proficient and able to solve your own technical problems as often as possible, because there were always going to be technical problems, right? If my pencil broke, I just sharpened it. If my stylus goes, I better have a backup stylus, or I got to get on Amazon and find out if I can order it overnight, right?
Right. Yeah, and that was like a giant part of when I was doing the Crusty Critic columns for Draw Magazine. We talk about that stuff. It's in the middle of a job. It's Thursday afternoon, and everything goes kaput. You got to finish that job. So sometimes in the downtime, it's good to just go, like you said, go on Amazon and order some Apple pencils and just put them in the drawer. Or you need another battery for whatever, or the backup for the backup. And it sounds kind of like, oh, well, you're being ridiculous, but not really.
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody we know has had some horror story. And when your shit breaks, it always breaks at 5 o'clock on Friday, just when everybody's closing for the weekend. See you Monday when your project's due.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is all this pro talk we're talking about. There's nowhere in these scenarios where you can email your project lead and say, sorry. Like it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. I mean, there are it's extenuating circumstances, but like this is the whole reason we're talking about this stuff today. And I wonder if people like listen to this and they get upset. Like, I hope no one's upset, because it's like everything we're talking about is part of this whole puzzle.
So
like
at the admission fee.
Like don't get mad. This is what it costs. You know what I'm saying? And even if you cut corners, and this is another thing I want to talk about with the colleges. Like, I've known many a student who figured out a way to kind of like, sneak onto the pirate ship. Oh, I use GIMP to color my cartoons. Well, I use this, and Paint Studio Sci that would like crash your whole computer every time you tried to save it. Like all that stuff exists. Yes, I know it's out there, but when you're on the 10-yard line and you have to finish this job, you really don't want to be messing with that stuff. You know what I mean? And this is another point of entry here.
Yeah, there's other things I would add would be like Apple Care for your devices so that they're protected. Yeah. I would say, postage scales, postage printers. There's all this stuff, there's a ton of things that you need if you're going to also do the self-publishing route. If you're going to be, fulfilling your own Kickstarters and taking care of your own crowdfunding, there's so much involved. I mean, I get the Adobe Creative Suite because I want After Effects, I want Illustrator, I want all the different tools they've got. Because I have to make my own Kickstarter videos, so there's tons of things that it adds up. It totally adds up.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the technology allows you now to publish your own comics. So when people, the other thing would be, if you're publishing your own comics, creating your own characters, you got to copyright them. You got to do trademark search. You got to do all that stuff, right? And so I would always say that if you're saying that $240 for a yearly subscription to Adobe is too much, then you're really saying you cannot afford to have a career, that this will be your hobby. If you say, I can't afford $15 a month or whatever it is for Clip Studio, but I can go to Starbucks, I can go do all this other stuff. What you're basically saying is, I'm a hobbyist. I can't be paying $50 a month for my, and plus 60 for my basic cable, or 70 or whatever it is now, because it's always going up. If you're out of pocket to run your business, because that's what you are as a business. If you're out of pocket is $200 a month, $250 a month. If you're saying that that's too much, then you're basically saying you cannot afford to be a professional.
And it's not a knock on hobbyists. It's not a knock. It's not a tier system of any kind. It's more like, if you can afford to do this without the pressure of keeping the lights on, that's awesome. But if it's going to keep the lights on, there's going to be costs.
Yeah, every business has it. If you're a doctor, if you're an auto mechanic, if I remember before my auto mechanic closed, and they were great guys. It's always great if you have a mechanic you can trust. And now these guys have been doing it for, like decades. But he told me he still had to go to school and he still had to learn, because the technology in the cars keeps advancing, and he had to keep learning all this new stuff with the computer to do this and to do that, right? So here's a guy who's been working on a car for 50 years, but he's still having to go learn how to, because everything's running through a computer now. It's great. You can work on a 1978 Chevy Chevelle or whatever, an old Nova or whatever, right? That's one of the reasons why people like those old cars, because you could just go out and take the parts off and put new parts on. But all the new stuff, and I remember visiting a couple of years ago when I was in California, and I went to Concept Design Academy, and I was talking to one of the teachers there, and we were discussing the fact that many people would probably not be doing stuff digitally now as there are, but the companies say, this is how we want it, right? So they're saying, I want all these background paintings drawn in Photoshop. I want all this stuff digital. I've done jobs for Disney where it had to all be digital, right? That's what they want. So you cannot tell the client, well, by the way, I really prefer woodblock. I am really good at woodblock. You won't notice the difference, right? And if that becomes an issue, they just pass, because there's other people will be like, oh, I love using what? Oh, sure, no problem. Right? You don't want that to be a block to you being successful. But it's probably true. I would prefer drawing on paper, but I'm old. That's how I learned. That's what I like, right? I feel comfortable with that. I have to craft my stuff digitally, and there are benefits to it. I can do things faster, but I like paper. But nobody wants paper.
Oh no, I was just getting back from Heroes Con. I'm still wearing my badge.
Did you just walk home, Steve? What happened?
I just got off the I just got back to the door. So the stuff I created all my original comics 30 years ago. I started self-publishing. They were all created on a Mac, mouse clicks. And over the last 15, 20 years, I've taught myself to do more traditionally because I was at the last convention I was at, people are buying original artwork. They want sketches, they want paper. The more AI comes in, the more all these other tech things come in, the more prints look like they're hand done. People want the hand done unique object. So those skills do come in handy. So I want undo. I want 100 levels of undo for everything I do. I want a safety net, but learning how to work with pen and ink is super important. At least is just one more thing I have to know how to do if I want to keep doing this for a living.
Also, I wanted to add that I know there's kind of, depending on what circles you travel in, there's kind of like a comic book. There's a Tech Jones. You know those Tech Joneses. Somebody shows up on Instagram with a 300-inch Wacom, and then you're like, yo, you have like Cintiq envy, like, yo, oh, I need one of those, you know. And I don't necessarily think and that all happens over time. You kind of realize how you work and what you're comfortable working with. So, and we've said before a million times that, you know, people that kind of jump through tech all the time, just trying to find the perfect line, the perfect brush, the perfect brush pack.
Brush packs. We were talking about that.
Right. And it's just like, you know, if you're really comfortable with this 12-inch thing, and that's how you get your work done, and you know, and you're consistent with it, maybe you don't need the like the real estate of a 32-inch. And where are you going to put that thing anyway?
Well, it's also, I think it's the shiny button thing. Yes. Because especially for younger artists, you know, you see, oh, well, I like this artist and they just made a custom brush pack. Oh, and if I get that custom brush pack, I'm going to be able to paint just like Nathan Folks or whoever you like. And the fact is, that guy could paint that way with a terrible brush because he knows how to paint. The brush pack might allow you to make certain passages, but it won't make you make a good painting.
Mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's you're right. That's a trick I would see with students. They're like, I'm going to get this brush pack and I'm going to use this marker, or I'm going to use this, you know, the magic pencil, if I get that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's going to solve all my problems, right?
I want to highlight a couple of chat questions that I think are really good to bring up. And I think we're going to have to do a part 2. This is very interesting. And our numbers are really high tonight, guys. Thanks. If you're new to the channel, like and subscribe. I love it. So, you know, our good buddy, Eternity Forever, a lifer here on Pencil to Pencil. Eternity says, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Amazon, Kindle Publishing, can they be considered publishing companies? If you publish for these channels, how do you prepare for those providers? That's a really good question. I'll ask you, Steve, you're Kickstarter king.
It's different in that case because you're really building your audience. You're not dealing with a publisher. You're not dealing with an editor. Right? You're not selling to a middleman. You're selling to the customer. And that creates a different mechanic. When you created a comic book, if you're going to self-publish a comic book, you're really selling to the retailer. You've got to get the distributor to pick it up, and you want the customer to order it when they look at the catalog, but you're really selling it to the retailer so that they buy it. They're the ones who buy it non-returnable and put it on the shelves, hoping a customer will buy it the way they said they would. Right. So it's just it's a different person you're selling to. You're selling to the customer, and the calculations change, but preparing for those providers, there's not much you can do. I mean, I guess you can know the people at Kickstarter. You can know who the different channel editors are and channel conservators are. So you know each one of those sections is curated. Like in Kickstarter, there's a Project We Love badge, and if you know the people who run the channel, you might be able to, you know, cajole them into, you know, maybe putting their thumb on the scale in your direction. But there's not, you know, there really isn't the sales mechanic. Sales portion of it is like if you know the Batman editor at DC, you know, okay, I have to make them happy before I can work on Batman. It's just a different
Right.
mechanic. I think.
Well, Steve, you know, just to jump in, I think Eternity's maybe asking about, like, you know, all the stuff, all these starter packs we've been talking about. Like, how would you shunt that in the direction of I'm going to do a Kindle ebook. You know, like, what do I need to, like? I think you would need to know the file formats that they're asking
Yeah,
for and the
the file
specs.
formats, which recently changed for Kindle, which again, Kindle's got two pieces: Kindle Direct Printing. This is the publishing side of it. So if you go, you can order hardcovers and soft covers from Amazon. That's all print on demand. So you got Amazon's print on demand portion, and then their Kindle Reader digital ebook format. Basically, you give them a PDF now, and it does it. But keeping up with that format, again, you need all the technical equipment that Mike was describing,
Mhm.
and the other systems is really that depends on what you're promising. You know, there and figuring out fulfillment for each one of those things. How are you going to, if you're going to offer a PDF on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, how are you getting those PDFs to people? Are they going to have any digital rights management on them? You can just put them in Dropbox and share the link, or you
Right.
can put them on my website, which has got a WooCommerce site and has a PDF stamping. So when you get the book, it says this book belongs to, in small print, Eternity.
Uh,
So I, you know, because I want you to be able to share the book with other people. You know,
But you got to do legwork, though. I
guys
mean,
do a lot of work, a ton of legwork and research.
mhm.
But
is that your personality? See, that's what I'm saying. Do you had the personality? You kind of like that. You like digging. You like finding that out. That's that. Maybe
I'm a
not
weirdo.
your
Yeah.
favorite. Maybe not your favorite thing, but there are artists who would sit down and love to draw a beautiful comic, and then you say, "Okay, now do that. Go over here and find out the file for." No, man,
Right,
I
right,
can't.
yeah.
No,
And
I can't.
there's a
stand
ton of that. There's a ton of that. I mean, I think I mean, if you're going the indie route, the main thing is your mailing list. I just have I got a bunch more email. My Center of My Heroes Con table was a mailing list. That mailing list is the most important thing. If you're going to be indie creator, nothing else matters. You know, that mailing list, Twitter's going to go away, Facebook's going to go away, you know, Friendster is hanging on, you know. Whatever system there is, and you know, and the more terrible they become, that mailing list is still the most precious thing you've got. Worst case scenario, mailing list servers go away and you have to hand email everybody, but at least you can. And you
Yeah.
know, that'll keep you alive. You could point everybody to your Kindle page or to your Indiegogo or your Kickstarter. Super important.
Cool. Thanks.
So our hypothetical student
Mhm.
has to kind of decide what path does she want. Does she want to go the independent path and do all the things that Steve's is doing on top of all the other things we were talking about, right?
Yeah, right,
Because you got to make it.
right.
If you don't make it, nothing happens, right? You
Right.
got to make it. Or do you want to go get a studio job, right? Do you want to work for someone else? Don't not want to work for yourself. You want to work for someone else. What you're going to have to spend some time being a detective. One of the assignments I had was I would send the students out to, well, the Borders were still going there, and then Barnes and Nobles. Go in the bookstore, go in the children's section, whatever. Look at the sections that have stuff that you like. It goes, that looks like something I could do. And then you write down the name of the publisher and the name of the editor and the name of the writer. You know, any information now you have a bunch of information that goes, Penguin Books does this imprint that prints these kinds of things that I like that. I would like to do that. Right. And then you contact those people and you find out, well, if I want to work for Penguin, how do I submit? Right. Disney has it. Every studio has it. They have ways and formats for you to submit. They have job postings,
Mhm.
right? So you're going to have to do some legwork because that opportunity is not going to come to you,
Mhm.
right? And That's the part where you got to step up. Like I said, you got to put the oar in the water and you got to paddle, right? Because when you're in school, the momentum propels you.
Mm-hmm.
Your friends and your teachers, and hey, you got to have this in on Friday. Finals are coming up,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of students, like I said, most students, when they get out, that's it. They stop because it's something they love. And it will probably be something that enriches their lives, but they are not the type of personality that's going to be driven to do those other things or whatever it is that you need to do to achieve your goal. And that's not a bad thing, but that's just reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a reality. So
Well,
you're in
I think it's
school,
also a thing I want to say, Mike, because I don't want to go say it's all nature. I do think the nurture part's important, and that knowing that you can do this, that it is possible. You're going to hear a lot of people say it can't be done, or that, oh, that's such a hard, it's so difficult to do that. Why would you want to do that? And you might hear that,
Right.
I feel like just knowing that you can do it, and there's different paths, and there's so many different paths, and there's way more paths than there were before. I mean, in 1993, Gary Reed and Caliber had a photocopied tip sheet. Here are the 5 distributors. Here's the printers. It was
Right.
amazing. But it was those 8 pages was all you needed to know because it was the only way to get published.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, all the crowdfunding, all the people we don't even know about who are thriving because they found their own way.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I
And
feel
then
like
what is thriving for you or for me may not be what it is for somebody else. So you find your own sort of like your own level that works for you, right? Like you say, okay, I need to make X amount of money. I can do it by doing stuff on Kindle, or I can do it with a Kindle and Patreon. You can kind of figure it all out. I mean, like I said, when I was 17, 18, 19, super serious, drawing samples, going to conventions, there was no way for me to do anything like that. Even if I had wanted to, it simply didn't exist. So the sooner you can focus on a path, even if later on you decide to change the path, you've got to walk down a path far enough to start making progress, right? Even if you later on decide, I thought I was going to go into animation. No, I want to do a webcomic. Or I was doing this, but no, I don't want to do. You got to walk far enough down the road to start making progress.
Mm-hmm. I want to add to this because I'm having these flashbacks of kind of like the before self-publishing years, like in the late 80s and the 90s, when I was just I would almost say I took 10 years to just be a detective, like Mike says. Anytime somebody says, "Hey, you want to go to the bookstore?" I was the first person in the car, and I wasn't buying any. I might have bought some things, but I was just studying everything. How is this stuff laid out in the store? Why does this title pop out to me versus that stuff? This, like I was doing this in my window over here. What is this paper all of these books are printed on? A couple of years ago, the comics didn't get printed like this. This paper is different. Like all of that stuff is important, and I would take like every Sunday, I would go to like the Barnes and Nobles or the Borders and just walk around and like be a sleuth. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with drawing. But when the time comes, you know how to speak the language, what you want. And going back to that Kindle, the Kickstarter stuff, when you're making a book out of whole cloth, you need to know what you want. Like when you click on that screen that says what pound of paper do you want, there's nobody who's going to answer that question. You have to know what you want, or this book's.
I made 13 pages. That's my story. Oh, well, our format is this many pages, this many signatures of 4. Oh, okay. Well, no.
See
right.
what happened was.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of things like that are not obvious, because if you're working for a publisher, they know how many, they tell me how many pages, because they know how many pages they need. But when you're doing your own comic and it's going to be printed, it has to be in signatures of 4. So you're going to have what? You're going to have 7 blank pages? right?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to be like, oh, I got to put something else on the, there's a lot of things like that. And like I said, I think it's really, in my experience, it's really sort of personality driven, because there's some people who really love to get into that and, like be a chef of their own thing. I want this kind of paper. I want to shoot my own video. I want to do this. I want to do that. They really,
you
like
have
Steve, Steve really gets into it, and it's a lot of hard work, but I don't feel that when I talk to Steve, it's like, oh, like I just chopped my left arm off to do this thing. I like self-publishing, right? There's a part of me that really enjoys doing that, and if I could just self-publish my own stuff and make a living, I would probably do that. And that's something that I hope that I can eventually move to. But I have overhead, right? I got overhead. I have a specific amount of overhead that I know that I have to make every month for me to cover my bills, and for me to be comfortable to live the way that I like to live, right? That's a whole other psychology too, because there's a lot of people, they would default to being comfortable over being happy, right?
That's deep, Mike.
Right. And that's not and again, if you've got a family, you've got a wife and kids are in school, as you get older, all those changes, all those decisions become more complicated. That's why I tell people, when they're younger, it's easier to take a risk when you're 20, crash and burn. Crash and burn when you're 25. Crash and burn when you're 30. Crash and burn when you're 50. That ain't easy. Right? It's not easy. So the younger you are, the more sweat equity you can put in and the more chances you can take, because as you get older, everything has more of a cost to reset, right? Like I published Action Planet in 2000. So I was like 40, right? Around 40. And so I took my Batman profits and invested it in self-publishing. And I did not make a profit. But what I got out of it was a whole other career, because that opportunity got me talking to Tim, and that led me to having an opportunity to work in doing storyboards, which gave me a whole other career in animation. So something may not necessarily turn you a cash profit, but will give you a career profit, a career opportunity. Again, preparation, meeting, opportunity. If I had not decided to self-publish, maybe I would not have had that opportunity at that time on that show.
There's a couple more things, and we're running out of time, and we're going to have to do a part 2. But something I was thinking about, and Mike, you keep kind of like pinging it, is all of this stuff is motivated by self-propulsion, right? I'm not a scientist, but I know you have to like put your foot on the gas to move forward, right? And like Mike says, the older you get, the more life starts getting in your way and weighing you down. It just means you have to fight harder, or maybe you don't do it. And again, this isn't like the happy fun time podcast, but it's real, right? And our boy Rich Woodall, what up, Rich, says, can we talk about diversifying income? Maybe we could talk about that real quick, because you know what? It's maybe your whole nut isn't coming from one tree. You need to have a couple of different things swimming just to make rent, and that's real. So maybe Steve, you want to maybe touch on that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, as a coward, I always diversify my income, because I think any one of them could go away at any moment. So, I mean, I sell books on Amazon. I have Patreon. I do Kickstarters. I my Twitch channel's monetized. I mean, all these different. I'm selling books on gaming books on Drive Through RPG. There's all these different things, and maybe one's only going to cover, my power bill 1 month, but that's one less bill I have, and that's one less thing I have to worry about. And those things are huge. And keeping clients. I mean, I do tons of different projects, and I'm doing a mapping project now for one company for the state of Florida. I'm doing educational comics. I'm doing web design for people and web maintenance for people. All that stuff is to make it so that I can keep surviving as a freelance artist, because who knows what will happen next. If the longer you're at this, the more you're going to see these kind of tumultuous changes, like when the .com bubble burst, or the housing market crisis, and suddenly every purse suddenly is, slammed shut, and all the freelance projects go away. You have to survive in some way. And yeah, what Rich is saying, all those other things you have to worry about, lawyers and accountants and all that stuff.
And JRD brought up agents. Like, we didn't even get to that. Like, that's a whole other column.
I mean, I had that happen last year. In 1 month last year, I lost 2 jobs that would have shifted my career.
Right.
Within 30 days, within actually 2 days of each other. 2 or 3 days of each other, because I was doing Ren and Stimpy, I was doing backgrounds, I was a background designer, and then I was going to ink a book for somebody. And if those 2 things had happened, I may have given up. Maybe I would have given up Judge Parker, right? Maybe I would have just kept the Phantom. And then out of the blue, both projects were canceled. Right. And I've had that happen before. So yeah, you have to diversify, because the fact is, if you are working for someone else in this, especially in this very mercurial time, how many people now have been laid off? People laying off people from Pixar or whatever, right? Somebody in a boardroom says, well, this is how we can save $7 million. Whole bunch of people just get flushed down the toilet. It has nothing to do with how well you did, how you're drawing, or nothing like that, right? And I've had that happen, right? And so you put all your, like Zoller said, you don't, if you're working for somebody else, also all your career, when they lay you off, you don't have anything. Right. You don't have the IP. Right. You don't have, you could spend 50 years working for Marvel Comics, and then they scrap you. You don't own anything. Right. Do you get 1%, 1.5% of something if they do something in a certain way? Right. It really, again, it's in your best self-interest to try to have something that you own, right? I mean, we're really entering very different times. And again, maybe you're not that type of person. You're not you're just too scared. You don't want to take the chance. You just want to get a job, you want to work on some show, and you just want to get paid and show up at 9:00 on Monday and leave at 5:00 on Friday. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. But I think, in my experience, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. I can look back over my career, zillions of things that I've done, all these drawings that I've done, all the shows that I storyboarded on, whatever. I don't get anything from that. I don't get any. I don't even get a DVD when they release the new DVD collection. Right. I get nothing. Right. The only thing I got from my time working in animation was, because I was in the union, I have a pension that I will be able to collect one day, but it's not enough to, orbit the Earth in my solid gold satellite or anything like that. So, but those are things you don't necessarily think about when you're young. You don't think when you're 20, you don't think that you don't think about retirement, but that's actually when you should start saving for retirement. That's when you should start squirreling away, $100 a week, $200 a month, because there will come a time in your future that more than likely you will probably need to have that nest egg.
That's tough. And just, we all know how tough that is to even just like put, ramen money away just, for a rainy day when every inch counts. I don't know. Do you have any advice on that? Like, how do you save when there's no room?
Well, I think there probably is room, but it probably requires sacrifice, that's also part of, I think, the whole picture, what we're talking about. To me, I've had a great career. I've had mostly fun and mostly up times and mostly getting to work on things that I wanted to work on, right? Mostly things that I had fun working on, right? And I haven't really been out of work since I started, right? I've had a few slow periods or whatever, but, knock on IKEA cover Formica or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been conscious of the fact that those other conditions that we're talking about exist. And it might require sacrifice, mostly requires a physical sacrifice of hours in the chair, but every job requires sacrifice. So, I feel I've done, I got to do what I wanted to do for a living. I make a pretty good living. I own my house and I get most of the things I like. I'm not, homeless and, but it does require sacrifice, which requires you to make choices, which requires you to think. And the sooner you get used to that and you can actually sit down and analyze your life, analyze where that money is going. What are your goals? What are the choices that you have? What are the choices that you want to make? What are the choices that you don't want to make? Then you're making an informed decision. You're saying, I'm doing this because of this, not just being buffeted by whatever conditions are going on. And that's one of the things I want to talk about with mentorship, because I was kind of aware of things like that when I was younger, but I'm way more aware of them now being older. And the sooner you become aware of that, the better off you are.
So you're saying I can't buy Taylor Swift tickets when I need an Adobe account? Is that what you're saying?
You know what? You gotta cancel your OnlyFans. What can I say? And you would be surprised. I mean, I would see young people, people 20 years younger, they will go to a Starbucks, they will buy something. You don't even think about it, but at the end of the month, how much money did you spend?
Mm-hmm.
It was for coffee, Mike. It's for coffee. So
right. And I love.
How dare you?
I love coffee, but there's always ancillary expenditures that you don't necessarily consider at the time, but actually do add up over.
Yeah, for sure.
Only Zoller. I got my account.
So again, I don't look at any of this as like Debbie Downer, like, oh, it's just like, if you can empower yourself with this knowledge, to me, that gives you more preparation to meet that opportunity when it presents itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have to be really mature, I think, to embrace that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be, and like I said, I was very aware of why were certain people like Neil Adams always successful. And then you would read some other story about some other cartoonists who wasn't successful. What was that person doing or not doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know, you see how Frazetta made himself independent, wealthy artist by starting that poster business, or his wife starting that poster business.
Mm-hmm.
And him insisting on getting his originals back when a lot of people didn't.
You know, I would also like to add, just for like a modern touch, because I don't think we talk about modern successes enough. Like, you can look at the penny arcade guys who made an empire off of webcomics.
Yep.
You know, or even like the Order of the Stick guy, the stick figure guy, who like blew up Kickstarter like a decade ago. But at the same time, it's always the work has to be put in, no matter what you're doing, you know, and you don't trip into that, you know. So, you know, we should put a button in this. I think we should do a part 2. We say that to every show. We should do a part 2. But, you know, I have more case studies. Maybe if we don't figure out a guest soon, we can just jump into another case study.
Love that.
And you know what? Like I said, the attendance was really high tonight. This topic, everybody relates to it because everybody has their own soup they're trying to eat, right? And I think it's super important that we can keep a conversation like this going. Steve, any last words for tonight?
I'd like to give a shout out to Shelton and Carla of Heroes Con for putting an amazing event on. And the penciliers I saw there included Bill O'Donnell, Tom Zoller, America's Tom Zoller. I got to see JRD and the team JRD, which was fantastic. Bob and Sherry Harrison, the Waringos, Suzanne and Matt were there. It was a fantastic weekend. You both were missed.
And Uncle Joe, you were there, and Addie M, you were there. No, that's fantastic.
I guess I almost saw Marshall, but apparently we just
you just missed each other. And you know, I think, you know, there's more discussion to be had. I encourage everyone to. There were a lot of Kickstarter questions. Didn't we do a Kickstarter episode?
We did. I think the audio might be awful.
Oh, well, I think the topic is still good. So go back into the archives and watch Steve's Kickstarter episode, because we went really far into that topic, and it needed its own episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's always more questions about that.
You know, a lot of our episodes actually are really evergreen episodes. If you're just new to the podcast, you go back and look what we've talked about. You'll probably find a podcast that answers your questions.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of praise over the weekend, guys. So
really, no, tell me about that. I need that. What did they say?
There was a couple of people who I didn't know. They came up and they just said that they watched the show, and they were gone before I had a chance to look up from my table. They were very sweet, and so if you're watching, thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we're gonna sign out. This was fantastic, and guys, I miss this. I miss us. I miss us. You know, this, but we'll be back. I think next week. We have to figure that out, because I'm in the middle of travel again, so we didn't get to that this episode. But
gonna board the TARDIS again.
Yeah. But you know, we'll be in touch. You know, don't be a stranger. All right, we're gonna get out of here. I don't even know if we're in a pandemic anymore, and it's weird out there. I was on a plane. People were just like coughing on each other. It's disgusting. So I implore you, penciliers, that please
cover your mouth.
Cover your mouth and wash and clean those curvy hands. Cover your mouth.
Cough into your elbows, everyone.
That'll be our new one. It'll be cover your mouth.
Cover your mouth. We'll do a fresh one.
That's right.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.